Okay, I think I got all my paperwork, but the Kickstarter won't be available for a week, a month. You know, the one for Saloon and Conqueror Creations and all that, but Lord, I hate the feds. Let's not get into that. Let's talk about how terrible of a player I am. Let's start this out with a brief history lesson on myself. I started D&D in a regular sense in 2014, I think. I had to be about 18, maybe a year older, but that's not important. I played D&D 3.5 under a GM by the name of John. I won't use his last name, but if you're watching this, hi, miss ya. My buddy Cody invited me to the game and helped me create my first character, Warbera, which I think I made a video on, and if I did, I'll link down below. His brother Logan and his youngest brother, whose name I can't recall right now, and their friend Josh were all part of this game, an Eberron game. All these names aren't important. I just played for a few years either under John or under Cody with a table of 6 players. That game is talked about in the video about my hatred of bards. Another link down below. I started 5th edition with some online friends and found out my hatred for it. So the guy running the game didn't have much experience and is actually my partner for Conqueror Creations LLC. But then we switched over to a guy with slightly more experience, but he dropped from the group due to personal reasons, so I took over, and I've been the forever GM ever since. Now, I ran one game for 3 years. 3.5 D&D, starting level 8, I think? That game ended horribly, but it too was an Eberron game, since I knew that setting most. Afterwards, I ran a short homebrew Pathfinder game, a homebrew 3.5 Earn game, which I will be starting again, and a homebrew Starfinder game, and a few others in the mix, but in that time I've noticed a few things. I moved to Florida, joined a group in a comic shop, had a few problems with the GM of that game, but that's a problem that solved itself when me and 2 friends made from that group decided to play our own game and had fun with Starfinder and Pathfinder. In the time, one of the other guys in the local game decided to run his own 5th edition homebrew setting. During the whole game, I found myself jumping in and making recommendations of what I would do, and it wasn't just a rare thing, it was constant. With my online group, which has stuck together for, God, how long now? 4 years? 5 years? And a couple of them I've known for almost 8 now. One of those guys also decided he wanted to dip into running games, and he asked me to help him out learn how to run games. And he ran 2, but I think the reason he hasn't run another is myself. So, Starfinder is one of my favorite games, and I recommended it to my friend to not go overboard with homebrewing the universe as I've done. I've regretted it because it's a lot harder to design an entire galaxy than a single world. I kept giving suggestions and recommendations, and at some point, every time he paused, I'd jump in and say what I'd do. Unfortunately, I'm certain this situation is why my friends tend to avoid running games around me. Hell, the friend that's now my business partner knows how terrible of a player I am more than any others. Lately, in between campaigns, I asked him to run a 5th edition module. If I remember correctly, we chose Dragon Heist. We found out there's a lot of bullshit about it, which was the final straw for me against 5th edition and Wizards of the Coast, and I think it was a big nail in the coffin for him too. During this game, I admit I knew a bit of the module, and my buddy and I talked about adaptations of the game to actually make it fun, because you're not allowed to actually win fights without calling for help. In doing so, despite being a player, I became a co-GM. Going into it further, I started giving more and more suggestions. At some point, I really stopped being Dragon Heist and nobody was having fun. I wasn't because I was a player and not running it, not Dustin, because he was seeing the Wizards of the Coast 5th edition module as lackluster because it didn't fulfill the power fantasy and wasn't fun for him to run or play. Not the other players who felt like they were being forced to play citizen characters instead of heroes. I know I'm a bad player. I know I have a strange obsession with learning about whatever game I get into. Whether it's Pathfinder 3.5, Avatar Legends, or many other games I've gotten into. I tend to learn every aspect, then try and run it, often when I'm not the GM. I know it's a sign of autism, but I'm not gonna self-diagnose. I'm probably just obsessive and retain knowledge for shit like that. When I end up in the player position, I often step into a controlling role, despite the fact I shouldn't be. I apologize about this every time I catch myself doing it, but I've fully accepted that I am an ungodly bad player. I've got other stories about this, but in all honesty, they're all similar. I am wired to run games. I'm a storyteller by my nature. I have 4 little sisters, one of which I grew up with, 2 have kids, one that's getting married next year. I grew up telling my little sister, the one I grew up with, stories. I now sometimes tell my nieces and nephews stories when I get a phone call or a visit. I fucking do that for my coworkers' kids too. So when I don't have a chance to tell a story, I find myself zoning out. I grip onto story beats other GMs may give me, but my brain will often be going back to that previous problem I have, jumping in and giving suggestions, which I wish I could stop that. But yeah, this is going to be a short video, but I am a terrible player. I recognize that. I hope others who watch this video will learn their own shortcomings, but no, I need to read a book and prepare to crawl out through the fallout, so shove off.